Hello, my friends. My name is Gerdes, and I'm just a professor trying to help you understand context in the war in Ukraine. I want to start here where I'm trying to look at follow-up articles about F-16s being sent to Ukraine, and I'm not seeing a lot. Now, I don't know if that's because of operational security or if somehow something was wrong or whatever, but here's what's happened over the last couple of days. Blinken said the first F-16s were being sent, that's currently being sent to Ukraine from Denmark 2 days ago. And then you saw a joint statement of the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine saying the same thing the same day. Transfer process for these F-16s is now underway, and Ukraine will be flying operational F-16s this summer. Then you saw Kaluba, the foreign minister from Ukraine, saying that were in an interview with Ukraine 24 that the promise to have F-16 fighter jets in Ukraine skies by this summer has already been fulfilled. That's past tense, and he was talking about how they are actually there, like, right? So it's been fulfilled. They have them. Operational security might mean that you can't actually say where and you haven't seen them yet, but that's what I knew as of yesterday, but I haven't seen any follow-up articles. Now, I'm telling you that because accuracy is very important to me, and I want to make sure I get things straight. And it's very hard to get things accurate. So I'm laying those cards out on the table. It's very hard. Here, this is Sky News yesterday. Keir Starmer gives a go-ahead for British missiles to be used in strikes against targets inside Russia. Okay, seems like a pretty fair headline. You can understand what's being said here. And then, of course, the Russians went absolutely crazy about that. London's permission to Ukraine to use British-made Storm Shadow missiles to deep strike in Russian territory is absolutely irresponsible step, Kremlin official spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said. Now, what did he actually say here? Well, speaking in Washington, Mr. Healy said, we provide weapons, equipment where we can for them to defend themselves, as we do for ourselves and any other nation in conflict. We require, because it's international law, that war is conducted within those rules of the Geneva Convention. Meanwhile, Mr. Starmer said that the military aid would be used in accordance with international humanitarian law. He said it's for defensive purposes, but it's for Ukraine to decide how to deploy it for those defensive purposes. I don't mean to get into a discussion here, as you would all imagine. All targeting, that would be inappropriate, but that's the position. Okay, so it sounds like he actually said that, and then they kind of walked it back. The UK clarified its position on Storm Shadow missiles, denying permission for its use inside Russia. Zelensky backtracks on an earlier statement suggesting otherwise. Zelensky, in his statement, well, let's read this first before I get the Zelensky statement. The United Kingdom has clarified that it has not granted permission for Ukraine to use Storm Shadow missiles inside Russian territory, contradicting earlier statements. This clarification has created an awkward diplomatic moment for Keir Starmer, as reported by The Telegraph. And even Zelensky's tweet, you would have thought that that's what was happening. I thank Prime Minister Starmer for all the UK's military and financial assistance provided to our country this morning. I learned about the permission to use Storm Shadow missiles against military targets in the Russian territory. Today we had the opportunity to discuss the practical implementation of this decision. So he thought that that was the case. This was Zelensky's tweet. So you can't always get it right, but you try to get it as right as possible. And even though I don't know that I'm wrong about the F-16s, I'm telling you what I know as much as I know and lay out the path of how I got there. Okay, let's look at what's happened over the last 24 hours. 1,030 Russians off the battlefield, 9 tanks, 23 armored combat vehicles, 48 artillery pieces, 84 vehicles and fuel tanks. And look at this, 26 UAVs. Now we're going to come back to that UAV thing in just a moment. Okay, the average daily Russian casualties killed or wounded in Ukraine through May and June increased. It was like 800 and change over the course of the entire conflict, but it's been very high lately. So in May, it was 1,262, and in June, it was 1,163. That's much higher. That's elevated. And that has to do with the Kharkiv offensive. That's what was going on. Russian casualties, the British Defense Intelligence update says Russian casualties rate will likely continue to average above 1,000 a day over the next 2 months as Russia continues to try to overmatch Ukrainian positions with mass. That's just throwing bodies at the positions. Okay, I said we'd come back to this. 12,000 UAVs destroyed. 12,000. Look at this. They just another 26 yesterday. 12,000 UAVs. That's just absolutely incredible to my mind. Andrew Perpetua's list, it's about 1.5 to maybe 2, not quite 2 to 1 Russian losses, like vehicles, armored combat vehicles, artillery pieces, things along those lines, to 1. A little less than 2 to 1. Okay, Ukraine air defense shot down all 5 cruise missiles and 11 out of 19 drones that Russia used to attack Ukraine overnight. So that's not bad. And if you have to get something down, get the cruise missile down. The cruise missile is going to do a lot more damage than the drone. Usually it works the other way around because it's easier to shoot down the drones than it is to shoot down the cruise missiles. But that's pretty good odds. Some things get through and some damage is done. The Ukrainians are also simultaneously striking back. Strikes and explosions were reported in Mariupol from the direction of the airfield, so we can see what's going on here with that smoke in the distance. In Belgorod, the air defense has been operating since this morning. A vehicle repair plant, Novotrans, on fire in Moscow region. So the Ukrainians are on the offensive and they are striking back. So that's what they're doing in the war. Meanwhile, we know that we just got past the NATO summit. I didn't mention this one. I just saw it today, and I want to give the props to the Australians for their contribution as well. The Australian government has announced its largest single military assistance package to Ukraine. It's worth nearly 250 million. Now that 250 million is not 250 million US dollars. That's Australian dollars, and that's worth 170, maybe 170 and change US. But still, I want to give props to the Australians for stepping up again with their largest package. This package includes air defense missiles, air-to-ground anti-tank weapons, artillery, mortar, cannon, small arms ammunition, etc. We're grateful to our Australian partners for this important decision. Power of unity brings victory closer. That's correct. Meanwhile, the UN, I've talked about what was happening in the Security Council meeting yesterday, where the head of the Security Council, which is Russia right now, would not allow the Czechs to speak. Here's what happened in the General Assembly yesterday. The General Assembly demands immediate end to Russian aggression in Ukraine. The headline is deceptive. What they were talking about was around the safety and security of nuclear facilities of Ukraine, including the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. The resolution was adopted with 99 countries in favor and 9 against. So you can guess who's in favor, and you can probably also guess who's against. Belarus, Burundi, Cuba, the DPRK, that's North Korea, Eritrea, Mali, Nicaragua, Russia, and Syria were those that voted against it. 60 member states abstained, including all the BRICS except for Russia. That's really interesting. That's telling. Last little bit, if you're still interested in donating to Pete the Medic's last fundraiser, we're trying to raise £320,000. They're up to £102,000 with 2,148 donations. This was Pete the Medic's last fundraising campaign. I will put the link pinned below if you want to donate to that. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.